Hi, I'm Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens, where I review fountain pens and I talk about art and design. You don't have to be an artist to get something out of this channel, but you'd have to be curious about fountain pens.
It's good to have you here, John. Okay.
This is a very exciting week for me in my day job as curator of the Maurice Sendak Foundation. On Tuesday, we introduced a new Maurice Sendak book. New in that it is based on a little pamphlet, a limited edition book that he created in 1970 for a fundraiser for the Rosenbach called 10 Little Rabbits. And what we've done is we've taken the drawings for that and we've made it into a full-scale, wonderful book. And Tuesday was the publication date for that, and it's already gotten really great reviews and been interviewed, so it's been exciting. But thinking about children's books made me think about fountain pens in children and what fountain pens are good for kids and also people who are just starting out in fountain pen land. So I've sort of gathered together some fountain pens, in particular Lamy and Pelikan in Germany. Now remember, in Europe, they still have kids using fountain pens. And actually kids have to use fountain pens in Germany in school. So that's a big market. And really, I think Lamy has led the way, going all the way back to 1986, when they introduced the ABC pen.
It goes like this: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABC, come along and sing with me.
I'll never remember that.
So I've laid out a bunch of possibilities from my collection. I love looking at the design actually of inexpensive pens and pens that are for school, since I've taught for all these years. And so I've built up a little collection, although I personally don't have kids. But I was a kid once, believe it or not.
I don't see why.
Who says I don't know any children? You? Warney. My brother was a child once with it. And as unlikely as it may seem, so was I.
Anyway, Lamy is sort of got in early in this world, and at least in 1986, they worked with Bernd Spiegel to design a pen specifically designed for young kids. This is called the ABC pen, and it has a plastic snap-on cap. It has this kind of rubberized section that sort of helps you decide where to put your fingers. For a little kid, sort of helps them decide where to put their fingers. And it has this very pleasant wooden barrel that feels very nice. It's a very light pen. It doesn't post. It has this funny little plastic end cap here. All the pens I'm going to show you use cartridges, because the idea is you wouldn't want kids fussing with a converter and spilling ink on themselves during the day. But they all actually can use a converter if you want to use a converter. I think the design is very attractive. It's light, but it also reminds me of a lot of Swedish design, and it would look very at home in the section in IKEA for kids, which has a lot of wood in it. So it's still made, this pen. And another thing to be said about it is that the nib is supposedly specially designed for a first-time user. It doesn't require supposedly a lot of weight on the pen. It supposedly writes effortlessly. I haven't found that it's that much different from a regular Lamy Safari nib, but maybe other people have a different experience with it. It's, even though it's for a little kid, it's very comfortable in my hand. As I say, it's very light pen, and I like the wood. Another thing which is nice is that it has this area. It comes with a sticker that you can put your name on and personalize the pen, and also so that each kid has their own pen and it doesn't get mixed up with somebody else's pen, and that's a nice a nice touch, I think. This is a pen that was introduced, something like 20 years ago. I have a whole video about it. It's called the Smile pen. It was designed by the Phoenix Group, and it has this strange feature that it has these turning knobs with these little emojis, and you're supposed to put them together and use it to signal to your friends messages. I'm not quite sure what kind of messages it means, but that's what you're supposed to do. I find that some amusing design idea, but if as a teacher, I think it's a disastrous idea to encourage kids to be sending messages and fiddling when they should be taking notes. That said, this pen, as I discussed in a much longer video, turned into the Nexx pen. This is kind of the third version of the Nexx pen, and this is a really wonderful pen. It's one of my favorite pens. It has a brushed aluminum body. It has this diagonal bottom here, and it goes from diagonal to round. It also has a snap cap like the ABC. It has this very long section that is rubberized, which is extremely comfortable. It writes really well. It has a similar nib to the Lamy Safari. I think these write really, really well, and I really love the way the barrel feels. So I've come to really use the Nexx pen, a pen like this, or the metal version of the cap version. I saw a version of that too, and I use these pens all the time. I think they're terrific. I don't know how well they've caught on. They still make them, but I have not seen anybody else use one of these pens. But I think they're great. One thing you could always use for somebody who's new to fountain pens, of course, is the Lamy Safari itself, which goes back to 1980. Like the Lamy ABC pen that I showed you, it was developed in conjunction with Bernd Spiegel. Spiegel, expert on the psychology of industrial design, and working very closely and studying and researching the way in which products are used. So he helped develop the Lamy Safari, and his organization really created a whole program for the Lamy ABC pen, where you start out with a pencil and then you move on to the fountain pen, and then presumably eventually you when you get older, you perhaps move on to something like the Lamy Nexx. So that kind of idea of sort of gradually introducing technology to students, I suppose, or pen technology, and how to write. How's the best way to do that? What are the best ergonomics to do that? That's something Lamy has thought about very carefully. Lamy's competitor, Pelikan, it also makes a whole series of pens that are targeted to students. I think the one that has gotten the most attention and is most interesting is this Twist pen. I haven't taken the sticker off. When you first get it, it's actually kind of hard to pull it apart. It also has a snap cap, but the more you click it back and forth, the easier it becomes. But that actually concerns me, because kids who are, small, it's maybe a little bit hard. But anyway, it has this interesting shape. It, for a lot of people, doesn't even look like a pen. People have said that it looks like something you might keep makeup in, or mascara. But I think it's actually a very beautiful shape, and it has an inexpensive feel to it. It's made out of molded plastic, but actually it's very nicely done. You'll notice that it has holes on either end in the cap, and that's probably that's been suggested that it probably is so that if a kid were to swallow it, they don't choke on it. For some reason, Lamy doesn't seem to worry about that so much, but it may have to do with where they're sold, and different rules about that. Anyway, it is designed with this unusual design, and then you open it up, and it has it's quite a wide pen, and it has this very large section that is very insistent about the way you hold it. Now, some people love the way this pen feels in their hand. I like it at first, but when I write with it, I find that it actually tires my hand. But maybe that's not true of a small kid. It's strange that it's so big that, that's easier, I guess, the idea that the bigger the pen is, that somehow it'll be easy for a kid. It doesn't. All the pens that I've shown you by Lamy so far post, with the exception of the ABC pen, does not post at all. This pen sort of posts, so it depends on how you put it on. Like here, in one way, it does kind of post, but it's not secure. It's a very big pen, so it doesn't need to post, but I feel that the kids are more likely to lose the cap. I like pens that post, because then you know where the cap is. If you don't, then you're holding the other cap in your hand, or you lose it, or it falls on the floor. So I think posting is a good thing, but it's really not something that I recommend with this pen. So depending on how you post, that may be an issue. A lot of Lamy's pens, Pelikan's pens, have clips that look like pelican beaks. Like, for example, this is the Pelikano Up, and it has a clip that is supposed to vaguely remind you of a pelican's beak. Nobody said this that I found, but I think they were thinking that the whole pen looks something like a pelican's beak, but that might be pushing it. What else can I say about this pen? It comes in all different colors and finishes. It's very affordable. All these pens are affordable, but given the sort of high design of this pen, I'm quite surprised that you can get it for around $20. So that's, and then I think in Europe, it can be as low as 10 euros. So it's quite an affordable pen, and that's a good thing when you're talking about kids. I much prefer, it may not be as exciting to look at, but I much prefer the Pelikano Junior. There's been a long line of different pens with the designation Pelikano, which always sort of means pens that are, marketed to be affordable rather than the Souverain line of Pelikan, or such as the M800, the M600. These are very affordable pens, well under $20 on Amazon. Keeping in mind that they're imported, they're made in Germany. There are certain things I love about this pen. It posts very, very well. It has this sort of translucent plastic, and I love things that are translucent. It's again, it tells you how to hold the pen, but I find that it is quite comfortable. It writes really, really nicely. So that's nice. It is very smooth. And then it also has this lovely little window so you can look and see how much ink is left in the pen. And I think that's a very nice feature. Of the pens here, only the Lamy Safari so far has an ink window. So that's a good feature, I think, is for a pen to have an ink window so you can see how much ink is left in it. I'm just noticing that the Safari here is not sort of, it's not screwed in right. There you go. There's the Lamy Safari. So you can see the ink window that it has. So you can see that actually works the best as an ink window because it's just open and you can see how much ink is in the cartridge. This is a little harder to tell how much ink is in there, but anyway, there it is. The Pelikano line, there are all different kinds of pens that are similar to this and have different designs. You can sort of tell that Pelikan is using sort of perhaps the same machinery to create these pens. And I have one more expensive metal pen I mean, I don't know if they're using the same machines to do it, but it's similar design. And this is the Pelikano Up, and I have a review of this pen. I reviewed it a few weeks ago, and I actually quite like it. I think the section could be bigger, but if you're using it for kids, it's probably perfect. Now here's one other really good choice. Maybe it's the best choice, certainly the most affordable, which is the Japanese Pilot Kakuno pen. I love these colors, the light blue and the white. This pen you can get for $12, and it is translucent here, so you can see how much ink, not just how much ink is left, but you can also watch the ink going to the nib, and I think kids like that. The colors are really sweet. I mean, this is almost like pajamas. The pen's like in a pajamas. I like that. It also posts very, very securely. You can see that it's, I guess, a pentagon shape. So that's really cool. I think and it uses a nib that is exactly, I believe, the same nib that is on the Metropolitan, except for it has a little engraving. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a little smiling face on it. But it would fit on the Metropolitan. And Pilot, of course, makes very nice nibs, and so it writes very nicely and is very affordable. I have two versions of it. Here is a completely translucent version of the pen. Very light pen. I'm not sure how well it would hold up over the years. It's a very inexpensively made pen. It's made to use Pilot cartridge. It will also hold the Pilot 40 converter in it, so you can use converters. And I think what's nice about this is that this is a pen that a kid could use, very young kid, but also it looks fine for a grown-up too, I think. I don't think that's a problem. I mean, in general, I have no problem. I would say the only pen that I would find weird to use in a business meeting, I suppose, well, it's the kind of business that I do, would be the ABC pen. But even then I would use it. I would think it would be kind of funny. Or, the Pelikan Twist. I'm intrigued by the twist from the design standpoint. The way it looks, I think, is interesting. And I actually enjoy a pen by Sean Newton that has a sort of similar shape, but it's much more narrow. It's much more subtle than this and much more beautiful. I think because this is made of such inexpensive plastic that it has a kind of cheap feel to it in the hand when you're writing, and my hand gets very tired when I write with it, so that would be my problem. But a kid might like it better. It might work better with children. I mean, if I had to pick which pen in this group that I like the best, probably I'm going to say the Lamy Safari, which I think is actually a good choice for kids and anybody of all ages. It's a fantastic pen. It's a little, it tends to be, depending on where you buy it, it tends to be perhaps as much as $25, $30. So maybe it's a little more expensive. The Pilot pen is very affordable. Really almost the price of a disposable pen. And I really like the Pelikano Junior. The one thing I don't like about the Junior is the logo on the side that says Junior. I wish it didn't say that. And I would say that kids in general, or a lot of kids, don't like being called Junior. So I think that's a mistake. I wouldn't say that. I would come up with a better name, and I wouldn't put the name on the side of the pen in that way. I think Lamy does a better job of designing their logo and using their logo in these kind of range of price pens. So I will do a writing sample of a few of these pens just to see how they write and give you a comparison. And I hope this is helpful. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe. So how do these pens write? Well, here again is the Lamy ABC. I have a Lamy green cartridge in this. And it is a nib, which here seems to write like a medium, or even somewhere between a medium and a fine. It has no line variation to it at all. It does write in reverse. And it's reasonably wet and smooth. Here is the Pelikan Twist. Now this has a very nice nib. It's really quite smooth. This is a medium. This is Pelikan Royal Blue cartridge. So I prefer this nib to the nib on the ABC. And actually, it seems to me to be this flows and is easier to get ink out of. This is the Pelikano Junior, and it's very similar to the other Pelikan. It might even be nicer. This is also a blue Pelikan cartridge. It seems to be a little darker, actually. That comes with these pens. None of these pens have much line variation to it. This is particularly smooth. I love writing with this pen. I think this is very, very nice. It's similar writing experience to the Pelikano Up that I reviewed before. It's a bit wetter than any of the other pens. And here's the Kakuno. You'll notice what I really like about it for a young person is the clear section, so that you get to see the ink come into the nib. And I think that's really cool because that's like showing a kid how the pen actually works. So I really like that, and particularly if you happen to have a converter but a cartridge in it would work the same way. I'm actually using the Con 40 converter in this right now. So this is the Pilot Kakuno. Now this is a fine nib, so it's a little bit like apples and oranges. And this is Waterman Intense Black ink. It definitely is less smooth. This would be a nice nib and pen to draw with if you're doing fine line drawing. Maybe not so good for just writing. Depends on what you feel about fine nibs. It definitely has a lot more feedback. I mean, one possible solution for students is a disposable pen like those made by Platinum and by Pilot. And they would write probably very similar to this. So in conclusion, in terms of the writing, definitely the Pelikano Junior was my favorite of all these pens in terms of the way it actually wrote. As I said before, I wish it didn't say Junior on the side, but otherwise I really like this pen, and I'm enjoying using it to journal with actually. So it's a great choice. I don't think you go wrong with actually any of these pens, with the exception of the Smile, in terms of using it in the classroom. I actually love the way this pen looks, and it's not available anymore. I mean, you can get it on eBay, but so really that's just here to show you an example of a kid's pen. There are many other possibilities, other choices. This really represents pens that I actually own. And for example, just Pelikano and Pelikan makes a whole slew of different kinds of pens that are targeted towards students. And I know that there are other companies. And then there's the whole issue of disposable pens. And there's obviously the Platinum Preppy, which would be a good pen for students. So there are a lot of other choices. But one thing I have to say just finally is it's something really delightful looking at all the colors of these pens and the charm of them. You know, if you think about how boring a lot of fountain pens are, this is really nice, I think, and it gives me a lot of pleasure. So thanks for watching. As always, please subscribe, and I'll catch you again later. Bye.